Did the WNBA just silently approve game rigging? The Indiana Fever lost by just 2 points in a nail-biter against the New York Liberty. But they didn't just lose the game, they lost the whistle. They lost the fairness. They might have lost the trust of the league itself. And now, all eyes are on WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. The league hasn't issued a formal statement. No press release, no public accountability. But the silence? That's louder than anything else right now. Some fans are even speculating, emphasis on speculating, that the league might be protecting certain teams, or worse, that this bias is baked into the system. Let's be clear, there's no confirmed evidence that Cathy Engelbert or the WNBA is rigging games. But when a coach openly questions the legitimacy of officiating, when replays show repeated no calls in crunch time, when a team has a -31 free throw differential over a handful of games, people are going to ask tough questions. And that's exactly what we're doing here. Because last night wasn't just about a few missed calls, it was about a league being put on trial by its own players and coaches. The fans saw it. The replays don't lie. And now the Indiana Fever are at the center of what some are calling the biggest officiating scandal in years. But how did it all unravel? Stay with me, because what happened next sent shockwaves through the entire league. It was supposed to be a statement game. The Indiana Fever were toe-to-toe with the defending champions, the New York Liberty, trading blows like two heavyweights in a fight that felt destined for overtime. The crowd was electric. The talent on the floor was undeniable. But somewhere between the opening tip and the final buzzer, something shifted. The Fever didn't just get outplayed, they got out-whistled. A staggering -31 free throw difference over just a few recent games came to a head that night. The Liberty went to the line 32 times. Indiana, only 15. That's not a small margin. That's the game. In a 2-point loss, every single free throw matters. And that kind of imbalance, it doesn't just raise eyebrows, it raises alarms. And then came the moment that flipped everything upside down. 2.9 seconds left. Indiana down 2. Caitlin Clark, the face of a franchise, the most talked about rookie in years, has the ball. She makes her move. She drives. And then contact. Obvious contact. Natasha Cloud bumps her once, then again, and again. On any other night, in any other arena, that's a foul. 2 shots, a chance to tie the game. But this time, nothing, no whistle, no review, no explanation, just silence. The kind of silence that hits you in the chest because you know deep down that something was stolen. The chance, the moment, the fight they put into every quarter, gone in one blown call. And this wasn't a one-off. It was a boiling point, a final straw. Coach Stephanie White couldn't hold it in anymore. At the post-game press conference, she let it fly. I thought she got fouled. I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us. She wasn't just frustrated, she was furious. And for the first time, someone inside the league was saying what fans had been screaming at their screens for weeks. It's disappointing. The disrespect for our team has been unbelievable. But this game wasn't just about a missed call, it was about a pattern, a growing list of moments that didn't add up. And if you thought this night was bad, just wait, because what came next wasn't a game recap, it was a case file, and the receipts were about to pour in. Stay with me, because what happened next sent shockwaves through the entire league. The outrage over that final possession wasn't just about one foul, it was the tip of an iceberg that had been building for weeks, and now the cracks in the system were impossible to ignore. Let's break it down. In their last few matchups, the Indiana Fever didn't just fall short on the scoreboard, they were getting hammered on the stat sheet. Not by their opponents, but by the refs. A -31 free throw disparity. That means Indiana had 31 fewer chances at the line than their opponents across just a few games. That doesn't happen by accident. And it wasn't about poor offense or lazy defense. Stephanie White put it best. If we were just chucking threes, I might understand it, but we're attacking the rim. That's the truth. Indiana isn't a team hanging out on the perimeter. They drive hard. They absorb contact. They fight in the paint. That's the kind of play that earns calls. Unless, apparently, you're wearing a Fever jersey. Time and time again, the whistles stayed silent. You'd see Aaliyah Boston get body checked under the rim. Play on. Lexi Hull drives, gets hit in midair. No call. Caitlin Clark gets doubled, elbowed, and hacked. Nothing. Meanwhile, on the other end, the Liberty were getting sent to the line for far less. A brush on the arm, a bump on a screen, whistle. Every time, it wasn't just frustrating, it was obvious. Obvious enough that players were visibly stunned mid-game. Obvious enough that coaches were yelling not at their players, but directly at the officials. Obvious enough that fans, analysts, and even former players were calling it out in real time on social media. And what's worse, these weren't isolated moments. They were momentum killers. Missed calls that erased scoring chances, phantom whistles that flipped leads, and in close games, where every point counts, this kind of officiating doesn't just tilt the game. It decides it. Stephanie White wasn't just reacting emotionally, she was laying out a pattern, a paper trail of biased officiating that had followed her team from tip-off to final buzzer. And when she said, "I don't know that I ever feel like the system works," she wasn't exaggerating. She was exposing something bigger. Because when the pattern is this clear and nothing changes, fans stop asking, "Was that a bad call?" and start asking, "Was that on purpose?" And once that seed is planted, there's no going back. Next up, the person who finally said what the league didn't want to hear, and why it changed everything. Most coaches toe the line. They vent behind closed doors, file quiet complaints, maybe toss in a passive-aggressive quote or two, and move on. Because in the WNBA, speaking out against officiating doesn't just cost you fines, it can cost you your career. But Stephanie White didn't care. She stepped into that post-game press conference like a storm, eyes blazing, voice shaking, holding back zero emotion. This wasn't some heat-of-the-moment rant. This was a calculated explosion. A coach who'd had enough, and she went straight for the jugular. I thought she got fouled. It's pretty egregious what's been happening to us. There's a system, but I don't know that I ever feel like the system works. That last line hit like a sledgehammer. White wasn't just calling out bad officiating, she was calling out the entire structure of the league, a grievance system that, in her own words, doesn't protect the teams it's supposed to serve. She laid it out clearly: the Fever aren't being treated like the other teams. They're not getting the respect they've earned on the court, and the numbers back her up. Her team attacks the rim, plays physical, and yet keeps getting ignored by the whistle. And while some coaches would play it safe, White refused to sit quietly while her team got dismantled by inconsistency. This wasn't a coach losing control. It was a leader putting the league on notice. Every word dripped with fire. Not just because her team lost, but because of how they lost. Because of how they've been losing. This wasn't one bad game. This was a trend, a pattern. And Stephanie White was done pretending it wasn't real. The disrespect right now for our team has been unbelievable. You could see it in her body language, the frustration, the exhaustion, but also the conviction. She didn't flinch. She didn't sugarcoat. She didn't walk anything back. She looked straight into the cameras and exposed a system that's been failing her team. And for once, someone inside the WNBA said what fans have been shouting for weeks. This doesn't feel fair. Not just for Caitlin Clark, not just for Aaliyah Boston, but for an entire team that keeps showing up, battling night after night, only to get blindsided by silence when it matters most. White made a choice that night, to speak, to stand up, to risk it all for her players. But what makes her words hit even harder is what the players did right after. While the refs were busy swallowing their whistles, the Indiana Fever were too busy proving they belong. No complaints, no drama, just basketball, hard-nosed, in-your-face, championship-level basketball. And they delivered it on every possession. Let's start with Aaliyah Boston. She didn't just show up, she dominated. 27 points, 13 rebounds against the defending champions. She was crashing the boards, bullying defenders in the paint, and finishing through contact, even when the whistle refused to acknowledge it. Boston played like a superstar who didn't need help from the refs. She was making her own calls with every bucket. And then there was Lexi Hull, thrown into the starting lineup for the first time this season, under the brightest lights, with all the pressure mounting. And she delivered. 15 points, timely buckets, relentless defense. Hull played like she had something to prove, and by the end of the night, no one was questioning whether she belonged. But let's be honest, the spotlight never leaves Caitlin Clark. And even with bodies flying at her every trip down the court, even with defenders hanging off her shoulders and grabbing her jersey, she still posted 18 points and 10 assists. Double teams? Didn't matter. Cheap contact? She fought through it. Missed calls? She shook them off and kept going. And when you watch her use her body to shield a defender on a reverse layup, still no call, and still finish the play with style, that's not luck. That's elite. The third quarter told the real story. The Fever outscored New York by 17 points in just that quarter alone. 17 against the defending champs. That's not a fluke. That's what happens when talent meets effort and execution. Indiana wasn't just holding their own, they were running the show. And then the fourth quarter happened. Indiana built a 12-point lead. They had the game, they had the momentum, they had the heart, but they didn't have the whistle. New York's comeback didn't just happen with great plays, it happened with great timing for the refs. Suddenly, the Liberty started getting every call, every bump, every reach, every flop, and Indiana, still fighting through contact with nothing to show for it. But here's the difference. The Fever didn't collapse. They didn't melt down, point fingers, or give up. They kept swinging, they kept playing, because while the scoreboard was against them, so was the league. And yet they kept coming. Next, the moment that broke the internet. The final play that ripped this game from their hands and exposed everything wrong with the system. This is where it all broke. 2.9 seconds left, down by 2. The game, and maybe the entire narrative of Indiana's season, hung in the balance. Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation, the floor general, the face of this franchise, had the ball. This was the moment. And then chaos. Clark takes the inbounds pass, steps into her move. Natasha Cloud is on her, and then on her again. Arm contact, body contact, elbow to hip, bump to shoulder, 1, 2, 3 fouls. It's all there. You don't need a slow motion replay. You can see it in real time. But the refs, silent. No whistle, no foul, no free throws, no overtime. Just game over. And here's the brutal part. That wasn't the only mistake. Just seconds before Dana Bonner drove for a wide open layup, she got hacked. No call. The contact was obvious. Arms slapped, momentum halted. Should have been an and one. Instead, nothing. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Lexi Hull got hit with a phantom foul on Sabrina Ionescu. Hull was in perfect position. She didn't reach, didn't shove, just played clean vertical defense, textbook stuff. But the refs called it anyway. Sabrina stepped up and drained the 2 free throws that shouldn't have existed. Let's line it up. A missed foul on Bonner that could have given Indiana the lead. A ghost foul on Hull that gave the Liberty the lead. A swallowed whistle on Clark that stole the Fever's chance to tie. 3 crucial calls, all in the final moments, all benefiting one team, all going against Indiana. This wasn't letting them play. This wasn't just a tough game. This was officiating deciding the outcome in a way that no replay, no stat line, and no excuse could justify, and everyone saw it. The crowd, the announcers, the fans on Twitter, even former players were calling it out. The video clips went viral in minutes. Robbery, Embarrassing, rigged. Those weren't just fan overreactions, they were the words of people who've played the game and know what fairness looks like. And in this game, there was none. Because this wasn't basketball anymore. This was a game decided by 3 whistles, or more accurately, 2 that shouldn't have happened, and 1 that never came. Next up, the emotional aftermath and how Indiana responded with poise, fire, and a message the league couldn't ignore. The buzzer sounded, but the story was just getting started. Indiana didn't just lose a game that night. They lost faith in a system that's supposed to protect competition. And when the cameras turned on after the final whistle, the faces told the story before a single word was spoken. Stephanie White walked into the press room, calm but visibly seething. No yelling, no theatrics, just a coach who knew her team had been robbed. Her words were sharp but steady. The disrespect right now for our team has been pretty unbelievable. She didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't walk it back. She called out the numbers, the pattern, the silence from the league. She even admitted that she no longer believes in the WNBA's grievance process, the very system meant to keep things fair. I don't know that I ever feel like the system works. That's not frustration. That's exhaustion. That's a coach fighting night after night, watching her players pour everything out on the court, only to be slapped in the face by the people holding the whistles. But what made this moment powerful wasn't just what White said, it's how her team backed it up without ever saying a word. Caitlin Clark, face stoic, didn't blame anyone, didn't explode, she just spoke the truth. We're 2 possessions away from being 4-0. She's right. Strip away the missed calls, and Indiana's record could look completely different. 2 plays, that's the margin. But instead of spiraling, Clark stayed focused. She talked about what the team could improve: defense, execution, energy, no excuses, just hunger. That's the kind of mindset championship teams are built on. Aaliyah Boston, who played like a beast all night, talked about finishing through contact, even when the whistles aren't there. She acknowledged the missed calls but kept the focus on consistency and getting better. Her poise under pressure showed maturity beyond her years. And then there's Lexi Hull, thrown into the fire with her first start of the season, only to be penalized for playing perfect defense. No meltdown, no excuses, just effort, and 15 points on the stat sheet to prove it. Every player responded like a professional, but you could feel the shift in the locker room. This wasn't just another loss, this was personal. The message was clear. You might not call it, but we're still coming. And that mentality, that fire, it's the kind of thing that bonds a team in ways a blowout win never could. Coming up, how this controversy might be the very thing that transforms the Fever into a championship threat, and why the league should be worried. Every great team has a moment where everything shifts, where frustration turns into fire, where bad calls and blown leads stop being just losses and start becoming motivation. For the Indiana Fever, this might be that moment. Because while everyone was talking about the refs, something else was happening behind the scenes. Something more important. This team didn't splinter. They didn't point fingers. They pulled closer. You could see it on the bench, in the huddles, in the way they fought through every possession. The energy was different. The unity was stronger. And that us against the world mindset, that's not just a slogan. That's how championship DNA is built. And this squad has the pieces. Aaliyah Boston is a walking double-double, dominating both ends of the floor like a veteran in her prime. Lexi Hull just proved she can step up under pressure and deliver. Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham, Dewana Bonner, even Dantas. The rotation is deep. And Caitlin Clark? She's getting tougher by the game. Every missed call, every no-whistle drive, every body check she absorbs without a whistle, it's forging something in her. A new layer of grit. She's already got the vision, the range, the IQ. Now she's developing the edge that separates stars from legends. And here's what no one seems to realize. This is all happening early in the season, the adversity is hitting now, when there's time to adjust, time to grow, time to get stronger before the playoffs. They're learning how to handle pressure, how to respond to injustice, how to play 4 full quarters, not just 2. That's not a setback. That's a gift. Because when you've been disrespected, when you've been overlooked, when you've been blatantly cheated out of wins, you remember. And when the playoffs come and the lights are the brightest and the same refs suddenly start letting them play, Indiana's going to be ready. The Fever aren't just playing basketball anymore. They're playing with purpose, with a chip on their shoulder, and with a growing fan base rallying behind them, not just for their talent, but for what they represent. Resilience, toughness, unity. That's how champions are made. The WNBA hasn't said a word, no statements, no apologies, no acknowledgement that anything even happened. But while the league stays quiet, the noise around this controversy is getting louder by the second. Fans are demanding answers. Clips are going viral. In every game the Indiana Fever play is now under a microscope, not just for their performance, but for the calls, the non-calls, and the question no one in power wants to answer. Is this league protecting its stars? Or choosing its favorites? No, there's no proof that the WNBA is rigging games. No, Cathy Engelbert hasn't confirmed anything. But when you let this kind of controversy fester without transparency, you give conspiracy theories room to grow, you let fans start filling in the blanks, and the longer the silence lasts, the harder it'll be to earn that trust back. Meanwhile, the Fever are still here, still grinding, still battling, still getting up after every cheap hit and missed whistle. And whether the league likes it or not, this team is turning into a problem. Because when you disrespect a team like this, when you cheat them out of wins and expect them to stay quiet, you don't bury them, you build them, you make them dangerous, you make them unified, you give them something no highlight reel or stat sheet can measure. A reason to fight for every possession like it's personal. And if that's the version of the Fever that shows up in the postseason, good luck. This isn't just a basketball team anymore. It's a statement, a warning. And every missed call from now on, it's going to be noticed. Every silent whistle, caught in 4K, every bit of favoritism dragged into the spotlight. Because this fan base is watching, this locker room is locked in, and this league better get ready. Because if Indiana turns this controversy into fuel and storms their way into the playoffs with fire in their veins, it won't be the refs writing the ending to this story. It'll be the Fever